Hi and welcome to the second installment of Mastering AngularJS. In the first episode we gave you a little taste of Angular, so in this episode we'll get you up and running so you can actually try this stuff out yourself, and we'll dig in a little bit more into the framework. So here I am at the Angular GitHub site. AngularJS here is the actual library itself, but down here is Angular Seed, and that's a repository that provides you with a very fast way to get up and running with Angular Seed. So you could clone this if you're familiar with Git. For the moment I will just download the zip version. It's laid out ready to roll for more advanced systems, so the file layout is perhaps a little overwhelming when you first see it, but we'll get back to the point that we were at in the first episode and take it from there. So I'm just going to get this stuff up and running. So we'll start with index.html, which is in the app folder, and I'll just get these into my text editor and into my browser as well, and we'll bring them across. And there's the browser, and there's the text editor, and we'll see that just like in the first installment we had an ng app directive, and we included the Angular library, but you'll see here there's a whole bunch of other includes here, and that's just because this Angular Seed project is meant to make you ready for writing a real app, and in that case you'd want to split out your various parts of your system into various files. But we will take it from here, and we'll just clear this out, and once you're more familiar with AngularJS you can always grab the latest seed and start with all of that stuff wired in. So if I just do this, then we'll be getting very close to how we were in the first instance, and I will just copy and paste that code that we were originally working with so that we are kind of baselined back at the end of episode 1. So let's just make sure that that is all operational. Get some zoom here, and hello. Okay, we're ready to roll. Okay, so where to from here? Well, there are a bunch of built-in directives, that is what they're called in Angular speak, and that's things like this ng model and controller and ng model instance. So let's introduce a few more and see if we can get something a little bit more useful happening here. So perhaps the first one we'll work with is the concept of handling button clicks, for instance. So we'll throw a button in here. We have a button now, great, we can click it, not much is happening here. So let's get Angular to control this. So we'll apply a directive, it's called click, and we'll tell it to run our test function, which should exist on our scope, so we'll have to add that. Scope. So we've got a function now. What would we like to do when that button is clicked? Well, let's just keep it simple for the moment, and let's update some property on our controller, and because Angular is data binding to that property, we should see our screen or our view be updated when we click that button. So fingers crossed. So we're typing as usual, and then we click me, and we see that our input has been updated, and our little display of that value has also been updated. So hopefully you're seeing now that we've got real power from within our controller to affect how our view looks. So that's a good start. Let me just do a little bit of cleanup here. We'll get rid of that, and I'll just try and make things start to look a bit clearer. And really, this stuff down here, I usually call it my debug info. It's just a nice way of being able to see what's happening under the covers. Okay, so now we're saying that our debug information is showing us what our myProperty property on scope here is holding on to. Okay, so we've seen ng-click applied to a button. We've seen model and model instant applied to an input. Let's see how we can work drop downs pretty easily. So let's get some data, and remember our controller is the holder of our model information, and what you consider to be the model is arbitrary. It's whatever you put on scope, I guess, so you can make it as complex or as simple as you like. So I'm just going to throw some drop down items, and I've just made up this property name. You could call it foobar, and I'll give it an array, and let's put some fruit in it perhaps. And again, we're trying to make sure we're getting in the mindset that our controller runs the world here, and that our HTML is just a representation of what's happening inside our controller. So now we've got some drop down items. You could reflect those here as per all the other things in our scope, and you'll see that we've got 3 items in our model. Now let's introduce a new element. Let's get a drop down on the screen. So we use a standard HTML select, but this time we tell it to apply some options that Angular is going to handle for us, and we're going to close that out. And so we're going to tell Angular to get the values of the drop-down from our drop-down items, and we're going to use, I think it's called a comprehension expression in Angular terms, but it's very similar to LINQ or Python comprehensions or similar things in other language. So we're talking about fruits in those drop-down items, so I'll call it fruit here. And the syntax might look a little funky, but it's very powerful, and it means that things that populate our drop-down don't have to be pure arrays. They can be arrays of objects and the like, and we can use this comprehension syntax to drill right inside our objects that are inside our array. So when you use ng options, you'll want to use ng model 2 to set the selected option somewhere. So I'll say that might be our selected fruit. And now if I refresh the page, we can see that we've got items coming from our list, and we can select them. And for debugger output, I'll just show that. Let me get some breaks here. We'll just show that our selected fruit is being selected as well. So what happens now? Okay, we can see that we've got apples and bananas and oranges. Okay, and we can click buttons and we can update. So we've written about 4 lines of code in our controller, and we've applied a couple of directives to our HTML, and we're getting some fairly powerful behavior out of that. So we've looked at inputs, drop downs, buttons now. Perhaps we should look at another powerful piece, and that's the concept of a repeater. So let's introduce an unordered list, and let's say that we want some list items. There we go. And we'll just be very literal at the moment, and we'll say that we'd like one. It's looking a bit funky, the rendering, but we've got one item in our unordered list and it says hello. Now let's augment that with some behavior controlled by Angular, and so we'll introduce a new directive called repeat, and again it uses the concept of these comprehension expressions to allow us to tell it to iterate over items inside our controller. And so let's tell it to use our items collection, which doesn't exist at the moment, so let's quickly add something called items, and it's an array of things. and we'll give it a name too. We'll give each item in that list of items a name, and so we do that like this. And so now Angular will allow us to look inside the particular item that's been repeated in this li. And so now if I refresh the page, we'll see that we've got no items in our list, and therefore Angular is not displaying anything. So how are we going to get an item into our list? Well, let's throw another button on the screen. And I could have used that one, but let's just keep it separate. And we'll say that this is going to be a button that says the text add, and we'll get it to add something. Okay, so it expects a function called add to be on our controller, so let's add one of those. Okay, and what would you like to do when that button is clicked? Well, I think we'd like to add something to our list of items. So let's do that. And we're just using plain old JavaScript here, and we're going to push something onto our list of items, and we'll make that an object. And let's say that our object might have a name. And we'll give it a hard-coded property at the moment just to get this up and running. And well, we're going to be adding fruits really in the end, so let's say that the other property name is fruit, but for the moment I'll just hard-code it so that we can see that we're getting some action here. So now we've got another button, and when I click add, it's going to invoke the add function on scope, which is going to push a new item into items, which is here. And because our repeater, our ordered list here, our unordered list here is using a reference to this item, see how it's highlighted here, we should see some action here, and there we go. Now why are we seeing hello? Well, that's because we've hard-coded it here, but because we've said give us something to be able to give us a handle to each element in our list, we can now start to use some of our mustache syntax to spit out what we've got. And now if we do it, okay, we're getting the entire complex object that we're adding here. So let's just get the name out perhaps. We'll F5, and now we're seeing that foo's been added. And why don't we get the other piece out as well. And here we go. Okay, so now possibly we'd like to be able to get the values that are entered here added. Okay, so what are those values? Well, you can see that our debug info is telling us those values, and our debug info is saying that they are my property and the selected fruit. So why don't we just, instead of doing a hard-coded value, refer to my property and refer to the selected fruit. And we'll F5 that. And what happens now if we add? Okay, you'll see that because we're binding to the selected item when we add, we're seeing that that is the item being added to our list. So let's get some debug info here to make that clear. Spit out the entire items array. Okay, what's happening now? Add, and there you'll see that that's what's being added to the underlying list. Dinosaurs might eat bananas, and we can add. And dogs might eat oranges, and we can add. So now you'll see that our unordered list with a repeat directive that's spitting out every element in our items array, and we're getting a handle to it so that we can refer to things here, which is this complex object. And now we have about 6 lines of code, maybe, I haven't counted, and we've used 3 or 4 different directives, and we've used some comprehension expressions, and we've now got quite a powerful little system here. And so I think we'll leave it there for this episode. I hope that's getting you very interested. Cheers, bye.